The night before a hurricane, I waited downstairs at my office for 2 hours, but my wife never showed up, even though she said she'd come get me. Just as I was about to call a cab, I saw a text from her. Got tied up with something? Can't make it. Then, on her mail assistant's Twitter, there she was. Thank goodness the boss gave me a ride home, or I'd be stuck at the office all night. The photo showed a familiar dashboard and her legs in nude stockings. I chuckled to myself, gave it a like, and commented, "Lucky you to have such a great boss." After I left with my luggage, my wife panicked and started using all her resources to find me. Whatever I'm doing wrong, I can change. Please don't leave me. Close to quitting time, it began to rain heavily out of nowhere. Watching colleagues leave one by one, I thought about calling a cab. Just then, Joanna texted me. It's pouring. Wait for me at the office. I'll pick you up. Okay. I knew Joanna was trying to make peace. Last week was her birthday. I'd taken the day off, booked a restaurant to celebrate. But I waited until the place closed, and she never showed. On the cab ride home, I scrolled through Twitter and stumbled upon Bob, her assistant's tweet. The boss treated us to a party. What a fun day. The photo showed Joanna with her team, but she and Bob seemed unusually close. Joanna got home at 1 a.m. I confronted her with the photo. Today's your birthday, wasn't it? We were supposed to have dinner together. William, stop making a big deal. Who cares when you celebrate a birthday? I'm not just your wife. I'm a company boss too. Can't I treat my staff when they make a sale? She didn't even glance at the photo, just walked past me impatiently. I stood there stunned, deleted the photo, and wondered why I should care if she didn't care about her own birthday. Since that night, we've been in a week-long Cold War. Usually, I try to reconcile after these fights. Now, even though Joanna's making peace, I feel nothing. I just text back a simple okay. The rain poured harder, splattering to ground, but despite getting my pants wet, Joanna never came. Disappointed, I ordered a cab. While waiting for it, Bob posted again. Thankfully, the boss gave me a ride home, or I'd be soaked like a wet rat. There it was, the familiar dashboard with a doll Joanna, and I had one from a claw machine when we first met. Back then, Joanna hated the idea of putting it in the car. It's ugly and a driving hazard, she said. But after my constant pleading, she reluctantly agreed. Thinking back, I felt at ease, liked Bob's post, and commented, "Really lucky to have such a good boss." I knew Joanna had flaked again. The app showed dozens of people ahead of me in line. Looking at my wet cuffs, I canceled the ride, opened my umbrella, and walked through the storm. When I got home, Joanna wasn't there. I showered and changed, still feeling sick. Not long after I lay down, rustling noises woke me up. Joanna was back. Surprised to see I hadn't waited up, she stood by the bed, observing me. Though I could feel her gaze, my feverish head ignored her. She left the room after a while, and I fell back asleep. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and almost didn't notice the alarm blaring beside me until Joanna's impatient sighs pulled me fully awake. Despite having a fever, I had to make it to an important meeting, dragging myself out the door. At work, a coworker noticed how off I looked and kindly brought me fever medicine. No sooner had I taken it than Joanna texted. "William, are you upset?" "Why would I be?" "Well, you didn't make me breakfast today. Isn't that why?" "No, I was just in a rush and forgot." Since getting married, making breakfast was my daily routine, even though Joanna never touched it. Even during our Cold Wars, I never missed a day. Today, though, I truly forgot. But her bossy tone made it sting a bit. Ignoring it, I entered the conference room. The meeting dragged on till late afternoon. Checking my phone afterward, Joanna had messaged. "Almost quitting time, right? I'll pick you up tonight." "Okay, I'll wait downstairs." At quitting time, suppressing my dizziness, I stood outside for half an hour. Joanna still didn't show. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was Joanna. "William, are you off yet?" "Yeah, I'm outside. But where are you?" From her tapping on the dashboard, a habit she had when annoyed, I knew she was frustrated. Maybe as a make-up for bailing last night, she held back her temper this time. "William, Did your company change entrances? I'm at the front, but don't see you. Are you at the H building? My hand instinctively tightened around the phone. Joanna sounded exasperated and confident that she knew my workplace. Of course. I'm your wife. I should know where you work, right? Listening to her confident response, I couldn't help but look down. I had actually moved offices half a year ago. I even remembered texting Joanna the new address when it happened. To my surprise, she still went to the wrong place today. I'll just head back myself. All the roads here are one way. It'd be a hassle for you to come over. Joanna was silent for a while on the call, then suddenly hung up. When I got home, Joanna was sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the door. Home before me? Since we got married, I'm always the first one home. Even when I cooked meals for her, they'd end up cold because she wasn't back yet. I used to follow her around, complaining why she didn't tell me she'd be late. She would just shoot me a cool glance and then ignore me. Are you really unable to eat unless I'm home? Or do you want me to quit my job to revolve around you every day? But I waited so long, the food's all cold. Just toss it if it's cold. Do you really have to bug me about this little thing? Since then, I never brought it up again. I just quietly kept her portion in the warmer. It was surreal seeing her home before me. And to my surprise, Joanna actually came up to me. She stood there like a kid who did something wrong, head lowered. William, I'm sorry. I've been so busy lately that I mistakenly went to the wrong place. It's okay. I understand you're busy with work. Yesterday, it was because someone at the office closed a big deal. They wanted to celebrate, so I forgot you were waiting. It's fine, you don't have to explain. I just replied dismissively to her explanation. In the past, if Joanna had the patience to explain like this, I'd be overjoyed. But now, I felt nothing but annoyance. Are you mad, William? No, why would I be mad? Then I've explained, why do you still seem indifferent? I skipped breakfast and now you're acting distant on purpose, isn't that being mad? At that moment, I found Joanna to be a bit unreasonable. This scenario wasn't new since we got married. In the past, she would stand beside me in silence, giving me a glare like I was some clown performing. Thinking back, I probably annoyed her a lot. No wonder she often came home late. But I felt no anger at that moment, so why did she panic? I copied Joanna's old move, walking straight past her. If there's nothing else, I'll head for a shower. I need a shower too. Want to join me tonight? Nah, I'm not feeling well. I'm just gonna rest after washing up. I pulled away from Joanna, leaving her standing there blankly, my mind in a storm of confusion and doubt. I grabbed the handle and walked into the bathroom. As I closed the door, I heard the front door slam shut. So, Joanna left again. Is this another round of Cold War? I shook my head, turned on the shower, letting the warm water wash over me. During past Cold Wars, I'd be anxious, trying to figure out ways to end it. Sometimes I'd pretend to send a wrong message and recall it or find a post to share on Twitter. But Joanna never seemed interested in my messages or tweets. Back then, my thoughts were all on her, distracting me from work. Now, there was no anxiety, just an odd sense of peace. Especially at night, when I wanted a good sleep, but Joanna's late returns always woke me. Now, with her in the guest room, I sleep surprisingly well. I don't even need to spend time cooking for her since she wouldn't eat it anyway. Since marriage, I've poured most of my energy into Joanna, leaving little time for myself. Every day, I kept messaging Joanna, asking if she's eaten, or sharing snippets of my day. She rarely replied, and even then, it was just curt responses, but I didn't mind. I rarely stayed late at work, eager to rush home and cook for her, hoping she'd have a warm meal. But Joanna was always busy, work, social events, sometimes gone for an entire week. Now that I've decided not to center my life around her, the relief was unexpected. Joanna hadn't been home for days, and I pulled out my phone, checking Bob's Twitter. As expected, she's been with him, going on trips, meeting clients. Photos showed Joanna smiling more than she ever did with me. Before, seeing her with another guy would have driven me crazy with jealousy. She always managed to play innocent, inventing countless excuses. Over time, she stopped explaining and just stormed out. Now I see their photos and feel nothing, even liking the posts one by one. After leading a successful meeting, my company plans to promote me, though the position's in another city. Initially hesitant to accept, now I'm determined to put some distance between us. After work, I was shocked to see Joanna at the company door. Instinctively, I tried to avoid her, but she anticipated it and blocked my path. William, I happen to be in the area for some stuff. Thought I'd pick you up. Okay. I nodded, avoiding eye contact. Opening the passenger door, there was Bob sitting inside. Hey William, long time no see. I was out discussing business with Joanna. She's giving me a ride. You don't mind, right? It's just business, why would I mind? I smiled at Bob and slid into the back seat. Joanna, getting in last, sensed the awkwardness, glancing back to explain. Bob gets car sick, so I let him sit up front. Getting car sick is normal, no need to explain. I looked calmly at Joanna as she turned away, looking uneasy. I bet she's pretty surprised right now. Although I don't usually ride in her car, whenever I do, I always insist on sitting in the passenger seat. I used to feel proud sitting shotgun next to Joanna. Back then, she'd always get pretty impatient, and sometimes we'd even argue about it. But she never knew I just wanted to be by her side. Plain and simple. Now, it doesn't really matter to me who sits next to her. Bob was sitting comfortably next to Joanna, chatting away about company stuff. I didn't understand, and I didn't want to, so I just closed my eyes for a little rest. But even with my eyes closed, Bob didn't seem to want to leave me out. William, how come you didn't go to Joanna's birthday bash at the company last time? I honestly didn't know about her party. That day was pretty hectic, and I just forgot it was her birthday. I opened my eyes and caught a glimpse of Joanna in the rearview mirror. She looked a bit uneasy, her eyes darting around nervously. Trying to sound surprised, she protested. Aren't you two married for years now? Maybe you've been together so long that it's easy to forget? Bob just stopped talking. You both are distracting me. Joanna quickly shut Bob down, clearly feeling guilty. Bob realized he'd put his foot in his mouth and withdrew into silence. I chuckled and closed my eyes again. Bob might think I forgot Joanna's birthday, but little did he know that I remember everything about her. Birthdays, anniversaries, you name it. Before I knew it, we were home. After putting away my stuff, I headed to the kitchen to cook some noodles. When I came out with just one bowl, Joanna's face stiffened. William, did you only make one bowl? Where's mine? Didn't you eat when you were out taking care of stuff earlier? Didn't get full? I looked at her, feigning confusion, and she seemed to shrink back a bit. I ignored it and started eating. She awkwardly sat down across from me, looking like she wanted to say something but didn't. Back in the day, I might have asked her what was up, but now, I just wanted to enjoy my dinner in peace. Feeling the cold shoulder, Joanna finally spoke up. I actually remember you waiting for me that day, but an employee landed a big deal, and it just happened to be on my birthday. They insisted on celebrating, and it slipped my mind to tell you. This stuff's in the past, no point in bringing it up. I wasn't all that bothered, really. For a moment, Joanna seemed genuinely surprised, a reaction she often mockingly uses. I remember the last time I pressed her about her relationship with Bob. She flipped. Bob's just my assistant, all right? Why do you keep bringing up such a minor issue? William, can you just drop it? You're seriously getting on my nerves. That was the start of our longest silent treatment. Snapping back to the present, I quickly polished off my noodles. Before Joanna could head out again, I handed her the divorce papers I'd had a lawyer draft up. Joanna glanced at the title and couldn't help but scoff. William, what does this mean? Are you doing the divorce dance again? You're not a kid anymore. Can we stop with these games? She didn't even bother reading it. She just tossed the papers on the floor. I picked them up, handed them to her once more. This time I'm serious. Her expression darkened visibly. She slammed her hand over the papers. William, does this give you some kind of thrill? Can't you just tell me what you want? Do you think I've got time to keep playing games with you? I looked at her calmly, saying nothing. If I spoke, we'd end up in a huge fight. Joanna gave me one last icy look, then stormed out. I didn't care where she went or what she had to do. I left the divorce papers in her office and started browsing new listings for my new position. When I finally turned off the lights to rest, she hadn't come home. I was fine with that, enjoyed the peace. The next day after work, I saw her waiting at the company entrance. Caught me off guard, but I didn't mind. Climbing into the back seat out of habit made her look a bit confused. "William, you're sitting in the back? Doesn't matter where I sit since you're driving, right? If it doesn't matter, move to the front." With a shrug, I moved to the passenger seat. As I sat down, I felt something hard under me. It was a wristwatch. Joanna's expression shifted uneasily, and she quickly explained. "This must be Bob's watch. He always leaves stuff behind. Looks pretty pricey. Make sure you return it to him." I handed the watch over, and she took it, though she couldn't resist explaining further. "William, seriously, there's nothing between Bob and me. You have to believe me. It's a professional work thing. You don't have to explain. It doesn't matter to me." I interrupted her mid-explanation. In the moving car, I watched the city zoom by outside and felt an odd sense of relief. Once home, I turned on the TV, thinking of unwinding with a movie. An hour later, I heard the keys in the lock. Joanna peeked in, her face looking a tad disappointed. "You're home early, William." She tried to smile, though it came off as forced. "A coworker dropped me off." I nodded, not elaborating. Once we sat down, Joanna looked at me, like she had something to say, but held back. I turned up the TV volume on purpose, pretending I didn't notice. After a bit, she finally spoke up. "William, did you sleep well last night?" "Pretty well," I replied simply. Silence between us had become the norm. I knew she wanted to break this awkwardness, but I wasn't willing to play along anymore. "So, do you have any plans for the weekend?" she asked cautiously. "Not really, might go to the office to handle some stuff," I responded flatly. Joanna nodded and sighed, seemingly ready to bring up another topic. "Last night I felt guilty about Bob. He's not doing well and It's okay." "I get it," I interrupted, not interested in hearing more. She sensed my distance, her expression growing more helpless. Her gaze lingered on our photo on the coffee table, a snapshot of when things were still good. Finally, I yawned and headed to the bedroom. "Good night, Joanna," I said lightly. "Good night, William," she replied softly, watching me leave. Closing the door, I leaned against the bed, feeling the air was unusually light. Though our issues were unresolved, I had a sense that everything was heading toward an end. It was just a matter of time. In the car, I looked at the continuous notifications on my phone and quickly put it on silent. Once home, I took out the divorce papers and laid them on the table. This time, I waited for Joanna to come back instead of letting her ignore them. When Joanna walked in and saw me waiting like I used to, a smile appeared. But when she saw the divorce papers, it vanished instantly. "After all these days, you should know I'm not joking this time. Since we're both here today, let's sign them. Are we really going to reach this point? Is there truly no room for reconciliation?" Joanna said, approaching with a bitter smile that matched her voice. I didn't say anything and just looked at her. Suddenly, Joanna rushed forward and hugged me tightly. "William, I don't want a divorce. Please don't do this. You hated seeing me contact Bob, right? I can delete him right now. Let's not get divorced, okay? It's impossible. You've always known what you were doing. But this isn't about how I didn't give you a chance. You knowingly hurt me, and now my love for you is exhausted. Besides, it's not just about him. There are many issues between us." Feeling a bit helpless, I gently pushed Joanna away and handed her the divorce papers. I saw her hand tremble when she touched them, but then, like she lost it, she tore them to pieces. Still not satisfied, she threw the scraps on the ground and stomped on them. "I'm not divorcing you, William. We can't do this. I promise not to contact him ever again. I promise to treat you well. Let's not divorce, okay?" I just stood there watching Joanna vent. I used to act hysterical like her, but all I got was her cold shoulder. With our roles reversed, I kind of understood her past actions. When you no longer love someone, nothing they do affects your emotions. Joanna agreed to it. Deep down, you know that living like this is miserable for both of us. Plus, I accepted a transfer. I'll be moving to another city soon. Another city? Which one? I have business in other places too. Can I come with you? Joanna stopped, looking at me full of disbelief and a hint of helplessness. I looked at her and shook my head slightly. Joanna, it's impossible now. Let's end it. Understanding my resolve, Joanna didn't drag it out any longer and went with me to finalize the divorce the next day. After it was done, I moved to a nearby city as planned. But on my first day at work, I saw Joanna at the company entrance. She was leaning against her car, staring at me. I nodded as a greeting. For the following days, Joanna was always at the office entrance, as if just wanting to see me. A coworker couldn't help but gossip. William, is that your girlfriend? I shook my head without speaking, my eyes drifting away from Joanna. When I returned home, not even taking off my shoes, Joanna's call came through. William, have you eaten? Want to go out for dinner? How'd you know I haven't eaten? You used to start cooking at 7, so you must not have eaten yet. Joanna sounded a bit smug, like she knew my routine. Couldn't help but chuckle. After the divorce, you suddenly care about me? I'm already cooking. Find a place to eat by yourself. But I'm unfamiliar here and don't know where's good. Can I? No. If dinner is all you're calling about, there's no point in continuing this conversation. Joanna was quiet, and I didn't care for more excuses, so I hung up. While cooking, my phone pinged twice, but I ignored it and forgot. The next morning, I noticed Joanna's messages. William, I feel a bit feverish. Could you come take me to the hospital? I'm downstairs. I feel terrible and lightheaded. Are you asleep? Why aren't you responding? Before work, I replied, you're not young anymore. If you're unwell, buy some medicine or go to the hospital for a drip. After wrapping up my replies, I dove straight into the day's work. As quitting time rolled around, a coworker leaned over with some juicy gossip. William, didn't see that hottie waiting for you this morning. Trouble in paradise? It was then I realized Joanna hadn't bombarded me with texts all day. She wasn't waiting outside the office this morning either. Maybe she's finally had enough. If Bob hadn't called me, I'd have thought she just gave up. William, Joanna got in a car accident. Maybe you should check on her? It's not far from where you work. She's not a kid, Bob. If she needs help, she can hire a nurse. I'm not her babysitter. You want to be her nanny, go right ahead. Bob went silent on the other end as I let out a dry chuckle and hung up. Back in the day, if I heard Joanna had an accident, I'd rush over without even being asked. Even for a simple cold, I'd pester her to take medicine and rest. But she found it annoying back then. I'm not a child. I know what I need. Stop hovering. Don't bug me. I'm busy and don't have time for these petty things. Right after I hung up on Bob, my phone rang again. It was Joanna. Her voice was weak, almost pleading. William, can you come see me? We're divorced now, Joanna, and I have work. I'm sure you'll manage. Can you come as a friend, then? Let's not, okay? I don't think we can be friends after a divorce. There was silence on her end. I didn't want to get tangled up further, so I hung up. A few days later, Joanna showed up outside my building, her hand wrapped in bandages. Seemed like she'd been waiting a while. As soon as she saw me, she jogged over. William, are you free to grab dinner with me today? Joanna, I think I made myself clear. You don't have to do this. I stood my ground and looked at her calmly. Joanna seemed anxious and tried reaching out, but I stepped back. She withdrew her hand, and I could see the hope fading from her eyes. William, today is our 5-year wedding anniversary. Did you forget? I thought about it. Honestly, it kind of slipped my mind. Back then, any date involving Joanna was burned into my brain. Never missed a beat. But maybe I've been busy, or maybe I've chosen to forget. We're divorced now. Does this day even matter? Yes, just consider it a bit of silliness on my part. This one last time, okay? Please? Her voice was almost begging. Her eyes filled with hope. I've already got plans with coworkers tonight. Just heading up to change. William, am I less important to you now than your colleagues? Joanna, I've got a new life now. I think you should move on too. I was at a loss. Didn't know what else to say. Joanna suddenly hugged me tight, and I couldn't break free. William, forgive me. I fired Bob. We're done for good. Please, forgive me for all we've been through. Joanna, don't you see? We ended up here not just because of him. Even if it wasn't him, it would have been someone else. I really don't care anymore. I looked at her with a faint smile. She paused, slowly letting go, searching my face for any sign of hope. After a moment, tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked down. She saw it now. I wasn't being spiteful. There was just nothing left to save. Joanna, goodbye. I said my farewell and headed upstairs.